The Texas teenager who killed 4 people.
The case made national headlines.
As the affluenza team, a manhunt underway right now.
It's been 3 weeks since one of Texas's most infamous juvenile offenders, Ethan Couch, disappeared.
Mother and son apparently on the run together.
The manhunt for 18-year-old Ethan Couch is intensifying.
Jumping his probation and setting off an international manhunt, with U.S. Marshals and FBI crossing the border to track him down. Welcome to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, a place where American tourists come in to soak in the sun and maybe a little bit of the local tequila. It's also a place where Ethan Couch and his mother, Tanya, came to hide. And it was right here on this rundown cobblestone street and in that shabby apartment building that their 3-week run from Texas authorities came to an end. But their troubles began 2,200 miles away on a very different looking street. Take I-35, 20 miles south of Fort Worth, and you arrive in Burleson, Texas, a land of big houses and big trucks. What kind of people live here?
Probably just the good, average, middle class, hardworking folks. Get up every morning, go to work.
It was the night before Father's Day, and Eric Boyles was spending it with his wife, Hollie, and daughter, Shelby.
Shelby and Hollie called out and said, "Eric, come here." When I walked through the door, they were standing at the window to the front.
Eric's wife and daughter were looking out onto a scary sight. A young woman driving a white SUV had spun out just in front of their house and was now standing by her disabled car.
So the girls headed out the front door.
The driver of the SUV called for help while Shelby and Hollie waited with her. That same night, down the road from the Boyles house, Lucas McConnell's family was hosting a party organized by their youth pastor, Brian Jennings.
He was one of the closest people that I had who wasn't family. I was around him all the time.
Around 11 p.m., with the party winding down, Brian needed to return some tables and chairs to his church. Lucas and a friend jump into the back of Brian's white truck, and they head down the road that would take them right past the Boyles house.
I remember we saw a car on the right-hand side of the road, and he decides to pull over.
It was that disabled car, along with Hollie and Shelby Boyles, standing on the road with the driver.
We're trying to get out of the car, and he tells us, he's like, "No, y'all sit tight. I'll be back in just a minute."
With Brian Jennings on the scene, there are now 4 people by the side of the road. Meanwhile, a third location just a few houses down, there's another party in progress. But this one's not so innocent. 16-year-old Ethan Couch is there with 7 friends.
They're drinking, they're having a good time, and then the young woman needs to go to the convenience store.
8 teenagers load into Ethan's souped-up fire engine red pickup. 6 in the cab, 2 in the flatbed, and head on out the road. Ethan guns it, hitting nearly 70 miles an hour in seconds. His truck barreling towards those bystanders near the Boyles family mailbox. Chance is bringing together a crowd of people whose lives are about to violently collide. The red pickup truck, packed with 8 teenagers, 2 in the flatbed, loses control and swerves into a ditch, sideswiping that disabled white SUV, then mowing down those 4 bystanders, crashing into Brian Jennings' white truck before flipping over into a tree. Eric Boyles is inside when his world changes forever.
I felt, you know, we don't live in California, but you'd almost think you just had an earthquake. I mean, the house shook.
These photos show what remains of the Ford F-350 that Ethan turned into a weapon of mass destruction, and Brian Jennings' accordion white Chevy tossed across the road. The bodies had been scattered hundreds of feet. At the moment of impact, Lucas McConnell was seated in the back of Brian Jennings' parked white truck.
Do you remember the sound of metal crunching, of glass breaking?
Glass breaking, tires screeching. The car that we were in got hit, and we got shot across the road. We nailed a tree. The back window was completely shattered. A lot of that glass was in the back of our heads.
Just seconds later, Lucas's father, Kevin, part of a caravan coming back from that graduation party, pulls up on the scene.
I see taillights up ahead. As I got a little closer, I see debris in the road, and I'm thinking, that's not a party, that's a wreck. The debris in the road that I saw was the chairs that we had been taken back to the church, and my heart just sank. I was like, oh my God.
As Eric Boyles rushes out his front door to where he left his wife and daughter, he immediately starts dialing the phone.
I was on the phone with 911.
Shannon County 911, what is your emergency? There's a multi-car accident out in front of my house.
While Eric's on with 911, half a dozen other frantic calls come in.
There's 4 or 5 kids. There's kids laying in ditches and streets.
Are you with the accident right now?
Oh, Lord. Oh, yes. There's another child in the ditch. Oh, my God.
There were already people out there in front of the house. There was just debris everywhere, table and chairs and car parts and everything else. I walked in the road, and the first thing I did was I found there was a male laying in the road, wasn't moving at all.
Between the 4 people dead in the street and the 10 injured in the vehicles, the casualty count is staggering. Eric Boyles was yelling for his wife Hollie and daughter Shelby.
I'm calling out Hollie and Shelby as I walk, and I kind of got halfway between the road and my fence. And that's when I found Hollie. And when I found her, I mean, there was no doubt that she was gone. And then it was a matter of, okay, so where's Shelby?
About 20 feet down the road, Eric sees a young woman, her body thrown up against the fence.
Everything told me this should be Shelby. It didn't look like Shelby. And I'm sitting there trying to process the amount of trauma the bodies went through and what would the impact be and what would that do to you?
At the same time, on that same dark road, Kevin McConnell is also searching for his friend, youth pastor Brian Jennings.
On the other side of the road, I see Brian laying in the ditch. I ran over there.
So you're on the ground to tend to Brian, and suddenly hear what you think is the voice of your son from the truck.
I just heard his voice, and it was just at that moment that I realized that Lucas had been in that truck with Brian.
Right as we got out, we realized that it wasn't just us. There was people everywhere, and then we saw Brian.
I tried to feel for a pulse. I didn't feel a pulse, and I pull out my phone. I'm calling 911.
You can hear Lucas's terrified voice in the background on that call.
I need you to sit here and I need you to pray, okay?
Oh, my God.
Come here. I need you to sit here and I need you guys to pray, okay?
Do you remember what you were praying for?
Brian's safety.
About that time is when the other cars from the party started getting there.
Brian's wife, Shauna, arrives on this hellish scene and realizes there's been a crash and her husband was involved.
I really thought, okay, he got hit, but he's gonna be okay. And I'm thinking, God wouldn't do that to me.
But her faith is tested by what she finds farther down the road.
I saw him and I knew that it wasn't good because I could see that Kevin was doing CPR.
And by now, Shauna's 3 children are also on the scene.
I was just crying out to God. I was like, please save my dad. I need him. You can't take him yet. I'm not ready.
The first EMT or firefighters that got there, they were just so overwhelmed.
They would just walk down the road and, is he conscious? Are they conscious? Are they conscious?
Tonight we're hearing the chaos in the moments after a truck full of teens
slammed into 3 cars, killing 3 Good Samaritans
and a woman with a flat tire.
The chain reaction crash happened late Saturday night.
It's almost like watching a movie. It's like it's not happening to you, and it's just surreal, and it's not real life, but it was.